construction issues that are occurring in the council. The camera that films from the back of the room is not working. So when you ask to speak today, if you do speak, would you just announce who you are? That way, because the camera from the back of the room behind you is filming, but it may not see who is actually talking. So if you would just, for an example, say, this is Councilman Hatley and whatever, if you choose, and those are my comments. So with that, I'm going to step out of the way and let you take care of your business.
Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Pittman,
Yes.
Councilmember Hatley,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Goodson,
Yes.
Councilmember Draper,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thompson,
Yes.
and Mayor Reynolds.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, we just have one item today on regular business, and it's a resolution expressing the city council's confirmation and ratification of authorization to file an amicus curiae brief in support of petition for certiorari in Higginson versus Becerra. The council will consider a resolution expressing the city council's confirmation and ratification of the authorization to file this amicus curiae brief. Mr. Huber, you wish to speak on this item?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members.
Your mic's muted. Sorry.
There you go.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, council members. I appreciate you taking the time to be here this afternoon. Most of what I'm going to say, and I'll be brief, most of what I'm going to say is in the staff report and the resolution that's contained in the packet. On March 25, the council met in closed session and gave direction to me to take certain action as a city attorney. I was on the phone. I was not present, but I was properly on the phone at that meeting. With that authority, an amicus brief was filed in a case pending before the Supreme Court, which is Higginson versus Becerra, that challenges the California Voting Rights Act. On May 21, actually, I apologize, that brief was filed on May 6th, which is a Wednesday, on May 6th of 2020. On May 21, 2020, a letter was filed with the Supreme Court alleging that the amicus brief was filed without proper authority from the city. Now, going back to March 25, 2020, following the closed session, the mayor reported out in part that direction was given. I failed to inform the mayor that a formal reporting out was required at that meeting, and in which the authorization was given to file an amicus brief. Since a formal reporting out was not done, I prepared the agenda item to be placed on open session today for council's consideration to consider this matter. The matter before the council is to consider a resolution that confirms and ratifies the authorization to file an amicus brief in the Higginson versus Becerra matter with the U.S. Supreme Court. I will tell you that this morning, the Supreme Court denied the petition to hear the case, which spells the end of the road for Mr. Higginson and his challenge to the CVRA. That does not get rid of the need to still consider this resolution in some fashion. Because of the actions that were taken, this still does need to be considered so that the action can either be deemed appropriate or not by the city. But, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions or to have a discussion.
Well, I have a question for you, sir. It's my understanding that 3 of these council members, say Councilmember Hatley, Councilmember Goodson, Councilmember Draper, contacted an outside attorney and consulted with them and had them write a letter bringing this to our attention. Is that correct?
I don't know that, sir. The only detail that I know, which is again what I put in the record, is that a letter was filed on their behalf with the Supreme Court. I don't know how the contact was made. I don't know the details.
Yes, sir. Were their names on the letter?
They were.
Okay. So my question to you is, could this situation have been remedied with a simple phone call to you?
Yes and no. A simple phone call to me would have caused the same action, which I would have put this on the agenda.
Absolutely.
I would have done the same thing.
Would we still be here today?
we would still be here
Yes.
under probably different circumstances, probably a couple of weeks ago. But no, we would, this action, the action that's pending before you is still, in my opinion, necessary.
Yeah,
But-
and I'm just trying to figure out why three of these council members would feel, in the interest of working together and being budgetly minded, as we've heard several times, that they would be led to contact outside counsel.
I would like to answer that.
When I'm done speaking, Councilmember Goodson, I'll recognize you. I would like to
So
say
that's
that,
just-
excuse me, Councilmember Goodson, when I'm done speaking, I will recognize you.
I'm sorry, it's really hard to understand.
Okay.
Could somebody give me a heads up when I'm able to address that question? Thank you.
Yes.
Are you telling me that you are not able to hear the comments in this council chamber?
It's erratic. There's still static on this line.
And it's hard to tell when someone is finished.
Right.
So I guess I would have to ask you, Mr. Huber, with that brought to our attention, are we protected with them being able to properly represent themselves?
We could do the call bridge, which might be clear.
Councilmember Draper and Goodson, Councilmembers Draper and Goodson, do you have the email that I sent before last Thursday with the contact information in it, with the phone-in information?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
The email that I sent Thursday with a telephone number and a user number?
Oh, I don't have that still,
Okay,
no.
I'll
But
send it.
I'm on the phone right now, so I can hear just fine.
So Councilmember Goodson is claiming to not be able to hear. Is that still the case, Councilmember Goodson?
Now I am, but I still hear that rustling in the background.
The fan.
It's the air conditioning system,
Maybe
which is necessary. Today it's over 100 degrees. So are you prepared to move forward?
I can move forward. I'm just speaking loud.
Okay. All right, well, I don't know if you heard my comments, but I was just curious as to why three council members would contact outside counsel rather than just calling our attorney and simply discussing it with him and asking him if this was the case, if they felt that a mistake was made. Would you like to answer that?
Yes, I would like to address that.
Please.
Approximately a week ago, this was brought to our attention by an outside source. I personally was bewildered. I wasn't sure how to respond because I had never been in a closed or open session meeting where an amicus curiae brief was addressed. There was no council nod of the head or vote or discussion on this in regards to signing in on something of this magnitude with other cities where we are opened up for potential litigation. And so absolutely, when it was realized that this was a letter was sent on May 6th by our city attorney on behalf of city of Oroville, knowing that the government code states that any time that there is a reportable action, especially on a amicus curiae brief, that it must not only be reported out from closed session, but it must be agendized in that open session meeting. The public had no opportunity to weigh in on this. We were blindsided, us, Hatley, Draper, and myself. With that being said, in order for the city attorney and in order for him to carry forth this action without an agendized proper vote, then one would just have to speculate that there was some conversation, but it did not include Goodson, Draper, nor Hatley.
Well, I would like to address that. Because I remember the conversation in closed session very well on March 25th. And you, Councilmember Hatley was there. Draper and Goodson, council members, were there telephonically. So to claim that this never happened, I think that your wording would be better if it was, you don't recall it happening,
Oh,
because.
no, I have totally recalled.
Excuse me, ma'am, I didn't interrupt you when you spoke. Please don't do it to me.
My apology.
So you didn't recall what had happened is what I'm thinking, because I recall it very clearly. And a simple conversation with the attorney, instead of attacking this man and his firm's integrity and honesty, is to me, it's appalling. It's offensive, and frankly, we're tired of it. We're tired of the these little meetings between the three of you running around and going to the newspapers and everything else and making accusations that we've done something wrong, when in fact it's not the majority of this council that is doing anything wrong. It seems to be the minority that meets on a regular basis. It's very clear that you are all very familiar with each other's decisions. So I would think that an apology to this man would be in order to him and his firm. I'm in the political realm. I've been elected. Apparently, they tell me I have to take all the BS. Well, he doesn't. And this is a man of integrity. And frankly, if I was him, I would really consider walking away from working for this city just because of these offenses. And then I do have a question for the three of you. It was only 5 short days ago that you had seemed to know all about these violations and these backroom deals and all of these things that you seem to be claiming in the media. Why did you vote for his new contract? And you even approved a raise for him somewhere down the road here, 3 to 6 months. I'm kind of curious. How is it that you think that someone is performing at a substandard level or dishonest level in representing you, and then you vote for a new 3-year contract and a raise? It's very contradictory. I think that you have confused this dais, and I think you've confused this public. And to piggyback off of your comment of that you were bewildered, I'm sorry, Councilmember Goodson, but we don't get to enjoy the opportunity to be bewildered when we are faced with a dilemma. We have to step up and perform. So I am really concerned about you saying you had no idea what to do. You were just knocked off your feet. Well, to me, because I know I ran against you in an election. You told the people that you were strong enough to run this city. How do you get knocked off your feet with a simple statement that could have possibly been a mistake and cured with a phone call, and you were so bewildered that you were knocked out of the game? You had to go seek outside counsel. I am really concerned with that.
Mayor, are you asking me a question?
I am. Please answer. Councilmember Goodson.
In answer to your question, Mayor Chet.
It's Mayor Reynolds, Councilmember Goodson.
Mayor Reynolds, I could have used a different verbiage right there, but this has been an ongoing issue with this current council in regards to a lack of transparency. No, I have total recall. I have business acumen. I have mental prowess. I engage in multiple arenas on a daily basis and am able to multi-purpose tasking all of those arenas. With that being said, I do have total recall. In no way, shape, or form was there ever a discussion in regards to an amicus curiae brief for the city of Oroville to sign on to. Now, what I do appreciate is Attorney Scott Huber apologizing for not having correctly agendized this issue in open session. With that being said, if it had been properly agendized, then the public would have been able to be made aware of the fact that that the city would be considering entering into potential litigation. And in light of the current information coming from the Supreme Court that has rejected that amicus brief that we signed on to, the taxpayers in Oroville have a right to know that to date, there has not been a city that has ever won the California voting rights lawsuit. And I'm going to reference a news article concerning the city of Santa Monica and Palmdale on April 19, 2018. The legal costs are rising, although it is not clear yet, but to date, 2017, that city of Santa Monica's total fees to an outside firm were nearly $5 million. In addition to that, the city of Palmdale ended up with a $4.5 million court judgment against it. Do you not think that an opportunity to weigh in on this by the citizens, by the taxpayers of Oroville, should have been given and addressed? So in that sense, I am very much appalled. It's not bewildered. I am appalled.
I have.
Is that, excuse me, the attorney would like to speak.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. There are two things I need to correct. One, this actually was agendized properly. It was not properly reported out. There is a difference. And I do want to make sure that is important. Number two.
Mr. Huber, I would like to ask you a question then.
Sure.
Here is my question. Most of yesterday, and I spent some time and ended my 2 o'clock in the morning research of multiple 12 plus California cities. Now, I can submit those dates to you where each city that was involved in one shape or form, whether they initiated an amicus curiae brief or they signed off on it. Not only did they report out from closed session, but it was on their agenda for the public to weigh in and for the city to have a formalized vote, approving or not approving. So when you say that, and respectfully, Mr. Huber, when you say that this was agendized, well, then I would like to know the date and the month and the time when the public was able to weigh in on this agendized item and the city council voted.
March 25, 2020.
Is just after the fact.
March 25, 2020. It was listed on closed session as potential litigation. It was tangentially related to the CVRA lawsuit that was threatened by Mr. Shankman in his letter. Now, back to my second point that I was going to make before. As to the fees that you mentioned for Santa Monica and Palmdale of $5 million and $4+ million, those are accurate numbers, but it's not applicable to this instance. Those numbers relate to cities that did not want to go to by-district elections. They rejected the offer to transition to by-district elections, and they fought Mr. Shankman and others, and ultimately lost in court and had to pay those fees. That is a true statement. That's not applicable to here. An amicus brief or amicus brief is also known as a friend of the court brief. And what it is intended to do is it is intended to notify the court as to the effects on others that are not involved in the litigation. To let the court know the impact of that case on others who are not in the litigation, not fighting the litigation, not paying for the litigation. To call an amicus brief a brief that is in the case as a litigant is not accurate. A friend of the court brief is simply that. It is a friend of the court notifying the court of information as to how that law or how that statute impacts others from a different standpoint than the prima facie litigants that are in that case. That's why it was filed.
I'd like to ask Mr. Huber a question.
Councilmember Draper?
Yes. I'd like to know why we didn't receive a copy of that letter about the city joining the amicus curiae brief.
The brief, actually, my understanding at the time was that I needed to bring that brief back to the city council to disclose it at the next regular meeting after it was filed. It was filed on Wednesday, May 6th. The next regularly scheduled council meeting is the first council meeting in June. You would have had it at the first council meeting in June.
Well, I'm under the impression that other people on the council were aware of this filing. Is that correct?
I am not aware of that. I'm not aware of that except for when the letter came in from May 21.
Okay. Great.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item?
I would like to speak.
Councilmember Pittman?
Thank you, sir. This is Councilmember Pittman. I've had enough of Councilman Goodson telling us that we're not being transparent. Excuse me, but why did an attorney contact you especially, over something going over this district aid issue? That really stinks to high heaven. No attorney contacted me about it. So I'm a little bit tired of you offensively challenging this council for being untransparent. We're the most transparent council I've seen in my 15 years or better as elected official. And I'm tired of it. And you ought to stop it.
Did you?
I don't need any comment from you. I'm just telling you right up front, I'm sick and tired of you using the word untransparent.
Councilmember Pittman speaking.
I'll be done in just a second. This was clearly discussed because I also asked for a number of legal issues. One being I felt this whole issue is an unfunded state mandate. The state of California dictated to this small city how the voters are going to vote their decision. And that's against our city charter. But we're not allowed to have our own vote, to have our citizens decide how they'd like to have this voting to go on. We're told that the state is sitting there as Big Brother telling us how to do things. And I totally feel this is wrong. This is the worst case of voter discrimination in the history of this nation. To pick people by their race on how they're going to vote is absolutely ridiculous. And if it takes the Supreme Court one day to declare the unconstitutionality of this, that's fine. I'm okay with that. That's all I've got to say, and that's enough.
Councilman Pittman, I think you asked me a question in that.
No, I didn't. I gave you a suggestion and advice.
He gave a statement. He didn't ask a question. No answer required.
So,
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Absolutely, there is, because
Councilmember
no one stated
Goodson.
who that party was that divulged that information. And for him to say that it was legal was an error on Councilman Pittman's part.
Here's your opportunity for transparency, Councilmember Goodson. Who was it that notified you?
In answer to your question, Mayor Reynolds, I believe that no smart person reveals their source. That was something that I learned in Journalism 101.
You're passing up your opportunity for transparency, ma'am.
So be it.
Okay, let that be noted to the record. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
Councilmember Draper?
I vividly recall Councilor Pittman's comments in that meeting, but I do not recall being asked to agree to an amicus brief filing of any kind. I would have remembered that because it's a fairly significant thing. And I just want to go on the record that I do not recall hearing that, although I do recall hearing Councilor Pittman's comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Draper, for confirming that it was discussed in the closed session. And do you remember yourself objecting to it?
I don't remember being asked
Okay.
to share an opinion about
So you did not
filing
object.
any kind of an amicus curiae brief. In my view, I don't recall it, and I don't think that we were asked that, quite honestly. I would have made a note of it because it's something significant. But anyway, I just want to go on the record for that.
Well, you know, I would like, and thank you for that. I would like to encourage all of this council, as I have since I've been here. I've reached my hand out many times, only to have the conversations that I thought were very friendly, encouraging, positive, only to have 3 of these council members turn around and contact legal representation or whoever with coming out of these conversations that I had deemed to be friendly and encouraging. I'm really confused at the performance or the attitude by you 3 council members in public, like you're all for the people. But then when you're given opportunity to be involved in many things, the ideas or the structuring, how do you think that things get on the agenda? How do you think that ideas happen? They're, you know, it's from people coming together and saying, hey, what if we did this? What if we did? Then it's agendized, and then we can vote on it. But when you are asked to be involved in these things, but you use those opportunities for contact to turn around and try and make somebody look bad or accuse them of meeting secretly, you know, we're beyond offensive. It's discouraging. You've wore me out from trying. You will not. These 3 council members will not have contact from me simply because they're not interested in working together. And they've proven it many, many times. In fact, I don't remember having a conversation with any of you that didn't turn around and be in the news or in the public eye, on social media, whatever, however your group gets out there. And these letters, frankly, it's always from the same group, the same small group. There's 4 or 5 people that you always have contacted or send these letters, and the letters are nearly identical. So, you know, it's tiring. If you're not going to help and join the positive movement for this community, then please just step out of the way and just remain silent instead of making yourselves appear to be foolish in the public eye, in the media, because in all reality, you are representing the council, which I would like to bring up on these letters. This is 2 in the last month, I believe, where you've contacted attorneys and said that the Oroville City Council would like to know, like you're making decisions for this whole council. At no time did this council vote to have you contact legal representation and speak on behalf of this council. So I suggest when you contact council after this meeting that you simply state your name and that you are a council member, not that you are representing the council, because I think that we all know where that leads. It leads to here. So is there anyone else who would like to speak? Sure. Councilmember Hatley would like to speak.
First of all, I never contacted any attorney, not at all. And I was simply asked a question, did I remember it? And no, I did not remember the closed session talking about this case. Did I remember any vote taken? And I said no. That, and you will never see, and the people that know me sitting in this room know I don't talk to reporters. So you will not see my name. So to say that I go talk to that, I don't, I'm not on Facebook, I don't do Twitter, I don't do that stuff. Allergies are killing me. But, so to say that I've been out doing something against this council is an out-and-out bald-faced lie, because I haven't. I haven't not said one word to media. I don't do that stuff. So, to me, all I was asked a question. The next, I had no idea there was an attorney involved, to be quite honest with you, till I saw it. And that was just whenever it was. But I personally have never talked to any attorney. I've never hired an attorney. I've never asked any attorney to represent me in anything like this, ever, and not in this case. And that's all I'm going to say about this matter. I'm done. I don't care what questions you have. I'm done. I'm not answering.
Councilmember Hatley, I appreciate your comments. If I was you, sir, I would be enraged that my name was included on a complaint with outside legal representation. Your name is very clearly in bold print on the complaint. So apparently someone has taken it for granted that you have supported all of these things. And if I were you, sir, I would be enraged. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
I would like to speak.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, sir. I did have a question for Art, but I didn't sound like he's going to answer your questions. I would like to know, though, who contacted him, because I wasn't contacted. The media has put a lot of spin on this and really put a presentation that the four others, I'm not sure who else on the, that weren't listed, who were or were not contacted, but I definitely was not contacted or asked if I recall anything. This whole thing is kind of sad. It's, you know, I think all of us here are about transparency. We're voted in by the people, for the people, to represent the people. I, for one, definitely don't have nefarious motives to try to sneak something past the city. You know, this whole thing started at the tip of a sword from an outside legal entity which threatened our city, was not started by an uproar within our community that accused this council of not having a diverse representation on this council. I'm proud of our city that we have a diverse council. Much of the argument and much of the debate here is because we are diverse. When I first got here, the majority of our council was female, and there's different races there. Before I was voted in, again, representation of both sexes and race on our council. So this, I'm proud of Oroville. You know, the whole premise of this move is based on the idea that our community is racist. That just comes down to it. It's not about representation. It's about power. It's about politics. It's about money. It's not about our community. So anyway, I was voted in to represent and serve this community. Again, this is about politics and power. I say we move on. I appreciate we all make mistakes, all of us, myself included. So I appreciate our attorney making a small mistake here. It was clearly listed in closed agenda on March 25th. The attendance of the council members is clearly reported, who was there and who was not in regards to this. So whether or not it was remembered, the discussion was had, and it is reported who was there. I, for one, would like us to just move forward and get back to serving this community.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I too am disheartened by the tone that has taken shape in this community for the last 3 years with the constant accusations of racism and misrepresentation. I know that I have been elected to represent the whole community. That's why I'm against this districting, is because I believe that it divides, it draws lines, and they were very clear about it, drawing lines because of race. We don't have a highly concentrated area of one race or another in this community. It's very integrated, and I'm happy for that. I have friends from many different facets of the community, many different representations, but when we speak, it's as a whole, where everyone is, believe it or not, the ones that I speak to in the community, the constituents of mine, are concerned with family and safety and parks and things like that. They don't feel misrepresented or downtrodden in any way. I think that this has been conjured up, and I think it's been stirred up, and frankly, we're ready to move on. I, for one, Mr. Huber, would like to apologize for the accusations of this council when something could have simply been remedied with a phone call or a contact. Sir, I hope that you will consider continuing to work with us, and I am going to accept my responsibility for not having reported out of closed session properly. I'm sorry for the chaos or the misconceptions or the confusion that this might have created. Amicus brief is new to me, but I guarantee you, anytime it's discussed in closed session, will be reported on separately out of closed session. The education has been very valuable, sir. So I personally want to apologize to you.
Mr. Mayor, I do, at the risk of contradicting you for just a moment, that responsibility was mine, not yours. I should have, that was my responsibility to notify you of that, and I failed in that responsibility. And I own up to it, and then, look, I'm not a perfect person, but when a mistake is made, I correct it.
Any strong leader will stand up and take responsibility for anything under their watch. And it doesn't matter who did, who didn't. I'm taking responsibility for that, sir, and I apologize.
I have,
Councilmember Smith.
yeah, in part, this is a question to Councilwoman Goodson. And there's a quote in the newspaper, and I'll just read the quote. There may have been a closed session meeting where it was discussed, but that meeting was not attended by the full council, specifically Councilman Hatley, Councilwoman Draper, and myself. Is that an accurate, Councilwoman Goodson, is that an accurate quote?
That is, Councilman Smith, it's my understanding that you just asked me a question
Yes.
in regards to a newspaper quote.
Yes.
And I reiterate that I myself was, and I have not missed one closed session meeting. There was never, ever a discussion in closed or open session regarding an amicus brief with the additional cities that entered into this brief. There was not. Now, if anyone on the council can specifically state that during a closed session meeting with the full council that the language of a amicus curiae brief was mentioned, then please speak forth.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify, I didn't want to attribute something that was inaccurate to
Wouldn't
your
want anyone to be
comments.
misquoted.
Correct. And I just wanted to, but I have a comment about that comment.
Yes,
if I
sir,
might
Councilmember
continue.
Smith.
So, I think in the interest of working together, for me personally, when I read that quote, the implication there is that there are somehow sidebar meetings or conversations. And interestingly enough, again, this was a closed session that happened back in March. And my recall is a little different than what's been expressed. And and again, I can't really, because it was closed session, I really can't get into that. But so that being said, when I look at the three names on this complaint letter or letter attesting to that this was not a decision of the city council, and three names appear on that, and my name isn't there, and then I look at this quote, and then again, in the interest of working together and having camaraderie, my concern is because just like the rest of the council with this amicus brief that we should have been aware of, and we were not made aware until just here recently, notwithstanding the discussion of how that occurred. That's a separate issue. So in some ways, I too was caught by surprise that this in fact happened. I was not aware of it. And so my concern is that why wasn't I, or this brought up by the three, that this was being pursued. And so it's almost like this, in a roundabout way, it's the same coin but a different side. And you're just, on one side, and, supposedly we're on the other side. And that just on the merits of the public perception. When I read that quote, I read how this has been ginned up by the media, to sensationalize something. And I think that the attorney has taken responsibility. It was going to be brought to us in June. But I think that, unfortunately, a lot more has been made out of this than was really necessary. And all I'm saying is that, if something like this comes to your attention, or to Councilman Hatley's attention, or Councilwoman Draper, or yourself, that I think that there is a better way than to get out in the media and create this perception that somehow all of this activity is going on behind the scenes, when in fact it's just not. And I think that's just very unfortunate that we taint our current council with this perception that just clearly isn't there. Not to say there wasn't a mistake made. Apparently there was a mistake made. And that mistake needs to be owned in an appropriate way. But I'm asking you as a councilman, as a colleague, as an equal, that, if something like this comes to your attention, to perhaps, find a different path that is less, that creates, less animus in our community. I just think that there's a better way to handle this kind of stuff, because it creates a perception that just factually isn't there. And to that degree, I believe that there is some ownership that needs to happen with, and we all received the letters from Tasha Levinson and others, Cecilia, others weighed in on this. It even appeared that there was some collaboration because our letters were very similar in nature. And it just creates a lot of brouhaha, for lack of a better word, that I just think was totally unnecessary. And we are going to move forward with districting. All of these things are going to happen. And in some ways, it just renders this whole thing moot. But I'm just as a request, please, if something to this magnitude comes up in the future, and it might, then let's look for a better path to fully disclose it publicly, and to try to have, I think, more cohesive discussion that's less, where we're not having as much animus. So, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith.
We got someone on the.
Yeah.
Councilmember Draper, go ahead.
Sure. I would just like to point out that until Jackie Glover put this special meeting on the net, on the city website, that's when the reporter saw it and had questions about it. We did not contact him. He contacted us. And so what instigated it was that the special meeting agenda was posted.
Thank you, Councilmember Draper. Councilmember Goodson, I would like to comment on your question asking if anyone recalled these comments in closed session. I would say that the majority of us do, and Councilmember Draper just stated a few short moments ago that she even remembered Councilmember Pittman's comments in the closed session about this item being discussed. So a simple recollection of one's memory cannot be, well, you can go ahead and use your reputation and your credibility any way you want and swear that it never happened, but there are several of these council members that remember very distinct details of it. So not trying to denigrate anyone's abilities, but I certainly am recommending that if you don't recall something, that you would choose your words. And even in the media, it's you're going on record with that. And then for, I don't know who's leading who here, but Councilmember Hatley has stated that he's unaware of quite a lot of the majority of these things that his name's being thrown on there as, and so I would think that whenever you're collaborating, that you would at least call the person that you're going to use his name. Show him the respect of that. Just simply don't take it for granted. He's not a vote by proxy. He's an intelligent, strong representative of this community, and he would like to speak for himself. So that's just my comments on that. Appreciate it. It looks like you're in the queue. Councilmember Goodson, would you like to speak?
Yes, in regards to Councilman Smith, I believe I heard what you said, and I just wanted to let you know that that request has been duly noted. And in regards to what Mayor Reynolds just spoke in reference to Councilman Hatley, that is a comment that I am going to refrain, because I do have a great deal of respect for Councilman Hatley, that we are all aware of who was subject to that outside source of information.
Is there anyone else who wishes to comment?
I'll make a motion.
Please.
Mr. Mayor, before we make the motion, could I just cover two things real quick? One, I want to ask the council if the council would like to have any time to read and consider the emails that have come in. Each of you have received a copy of those, and emails have been sent to the two council persons that are appearing virtually. So if you'd like to take a minute and review those, you can. If everybody's had that opportunity, we can move forward from there. If you do not need that time, I'd like to take a moment just to walk outside and ensure that there's nobody here that wishes to make any sort of comment on this item.
Appreciate that. I think if you read one of these letters, you've read them all. But I would like to know from council if that is deemed necessary to read these letters.
Yes.
It is. Wonderful.
I'm fine, I've read them all.
Yeah. I've
We've read them all. They're on the website. Isn't that an appropriate representation of?
Yes. Councilmember Draper and Councilmember Goodson, have you had an opportunity to read the letters?
Yes.
I heard one yes. Who's that?
Councilmember Draper.
Draper. Councilmember Goodson, have you had an opportunity to read the letters?
Yeah.
Does that satisfy this, council?
Yes, and I believe we do have a, Bill, do we have a comment?
I have checked outside in both potential waiting areas, and there's no one present.
Having no more comments on this item, having no additional comments from the public's input is available on the City of Oroville website. If you're so inclined, I am looking for a motion, sir.
I'll make the motion to adopt resolution number 8865, resolution of the City Council of the City of Oroville expressing the City Council's confirmation and ratification of authorization to file the amicus curiae brief in support of the petition for certiorari in Higginson versus Bracero.
I'll second that.
I have a comment.
Comment, please.
Yes, Councilwoman Goodson. Mayor Reynolds, I believe that one of your last statements was in regard to not recalling the, you had made mention of a statement that I had made, and I just wanted to clarify that. The question that I specifically raised was, is there anyone on this dais who remembers the verbiage specifically, amicus curiae brief, entering into that with additional cities? Please speak up. That was my question.
I understand your question very clearly, Councilmember Goodson, and your question was answered. Councilmember Draper had stated to this council that she remembered comments by Councilmember Pittman about the amicus curiae. So appreciate your comments. We have a motion, a second, and a vote.
Excuse me, could I add one more thing, please?
Councilmember Draper.
Yeah, I remember Pittman's comments, but as I said, I'm going on the record. I did not hear anything about sending a letter of support for an amicus curiae brief. Okay?
We can rearrange the wording any way we want and not remember
well,
this and remember
that's
that.
what my
And
statement
so anyway, you're covered. Good for you. Okay, we're ready for the vote.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, before we take the vote, Mr. Huber, does that motion satisfy all of the parties that we've been in contact with?
The motion does, although it does need a second.
I gave a second.
Second, okay, then yes.
And just for clarification, we're not backing up and litigating whether or not it was stated back in March. This is simply a vote as to whether or not we're authorizing the filing.
That's correct.
Yeah, so this really, we're not litigating here or voting on whether or not what we heard back in March.
That we are not litigating that. We're not going on about that. This is simply an issue has been raised, and I need to let the court know, does the city want its name on that brief or not?
Okay, fair enough. And just to further clarify, I think or at least I myself have always stated that I felt that districting was not in the best interest of Oroville. So I would essentially agree with this filing. And I've read it. I read the amicus brief, and I concur with its findings. So I have no problem with this vote.
And to be clear, this doesn't change the city's decision-making process on districting.
No,
Right.
we all know that.
Okay.
We're thank you.
I just want to be clear.
So I just wanted to say we're not calling each other liars or somebody's recalling. I just want to make, this vote's not backing up and we're putting each other in corners, pitting each other here. This is just standing alone on
That's
today's
correct.
decision.
I'll
That's all I'm trying to
Save that for the
flesh out.
media later.
Yeah, I'll just fleshing that out.
Okay. Ready to vote?
Councilmember Pittman?
Yes.
Councilmember Hatley?
No.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes?
Councilmember Goodson?
No.
Councilmember Draper?
No.
Vice Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Mayor Reynolds?
Yes.
The motion carries 4 yeses and 3 nos.
Thank you, and with that, we're going to adjourn to June 2nd, 2020 at 5 p.m.